In my life, it's been like I have to practice knowing that I'm loved and valued to get to a different belief.
Most valuable resource is a human life. And if we don't value those and we don't invest in those, we'll lose it.
Welcome to the Rethreading Lives Podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristin Keen, and this is the Rethreading Lives Podcast. Welcome to Rethreading Lives Podcast. Our guest today is Jason Kelloway. And Jason and I have known each other a long time. Jason runs our partner coffee, Social Grounds Coffee. So they are using coffee to change lives. And I actually... let me give your bio first. The bio that I know of you. I actually don't know a lot of details about your story. I know that at some point in your story, you were a homeless vet.
Correct.
Experienced some mental health struggles and then basically rethreaded your life. And now you're using business for good. Social Grounds Coffee actually... The mission is to actually give employment to veterans experiencing homelessness. And that's how we got connected, I think, is through coffee, because we were looking for a coffee roaster because we wanted to sell coffee, so it had to be survivor made. So we found you, and then you sourced coffee from different women's co-ops around the world, survivors in Nicaragua, and then veterans who were experiencing homelessness could roast them, and then we sold it and it helped survivors of human trafficking. So this was this beautiful partnership. Jason is energetic, entrepreneurial, full of faith and love. Like he walks into the doors of Rethreaded and immediately fills it with love. He's like my brother.
Yes.
And we're a little bit alike. We both appreciate the presence of Jason Jones in our life.
Yes.
We probably both struggle with the same things.
Yes.
So I'm excited to have you on today to talk to you about the rethreaded process in your life, in your business, in leadership. And yeah, I love that. I also know that you'll go deep, and I love that. So let's start with maybe paint the picture about your life right now. Where are you at right now?
Right now, I am happily married, almost 10 years, to my beautiful wife, Mandy, who actually just returned from preaching at a conference in Ohio. And I was here as a single dad with teenage kids. Which was always fun. So we have 4 children. We're a blended family. So I had 1, she had 3. And so we have blended our families together. Dylan is 20. Carson is 18. Riley is almost 18. In November, she'll be 18. And then Landon is our youngest. He's 15.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
I can't believe how old they are.
Yep. 100%. Time flies. So obviously, that's where we're at. Mandy and I are both pastors, and we attend Evangel Temple Church on I-10, and we do a lot of outreach in the city. I actually was just there this morning. It'll be 11 years that we've been reaching people with Cup of Love ministry in the inner city. That was what started first. That has been the heartbeat of who we are and what we do, is to give back to those that are vulnerable, those who need community and family. We can't always be a resource, but we can connect with resources. But what we found is with the lack of a family community dynamic, resources can't help, but it's an integral piece. It's a vital piece. And I know that's part of my story as well. So me doing this was where I came from in my homelessness, in my disaster. And so these folks know that that was my story. And they know that I understand. They know I'll be truthful and honest with them, and love them through it. And so, and then the coffee, Social Grounds Coffee Roasters, we're going into our 7th year. We are believing for some opportunities and some results for next year. And we're positioning ourselves for that with key team lead positions that I'm believing that are going to come through. It has been a little bit tough this year.
In what way?
Oh man. I think it's been tough. I thought it was just us coming back from the summer, but I think economically, a lot of people said there's been less spending.
Yeah.
I've heard it from a lot of restaurants, and of
our
course,
sales are down.
Yeah. And so it's trying to be resilient and creative inside of that, finding solutions. It's easy to find yourself in a pity party, easy to find yourself in a place of frustration instead of finding solutions, staying positive, seeing past a small situation into a better place. And so I've tried to position myself there to go, what separates certain people is solving problems quickly. And not staying there. So for some people, it could be staying there for a day or a week. And for others, in 15 minutes, it's over. And you'll see those people thrive. And so I've tried to really will myself into things that I don't necessarily feel like doing. So,
I mean, it is kind of, we could just jump right in. It's the, it's the rethreaded process. Time, purpose, vision, openness, community. And those are the ingredients. Yeah. And what actually, we're talking about your sphere of potential, your sphere. So to reach your potential, you have to heal. Those are the elements of healing. Those are elements to reach your potential. And blame and shame are what shrinks your sphere, shrinks your capacity to reach your potential, which is blame and shame is BS.
Yeah.
So we talk all this about this at Rethreaded. And it is, ever since I've started this and like exploring this and studying people who've overcome really hard things and talking to them and how they did it, blame of others, I realize how much I do it. And shame, which is like, everything's my fault, I realize how much I do it. And then now I see it everywhere. So like exactly what you were just talking about. If you get stuck on problems, if you get stuck in your pity party, if you get stuck there, you can be stuck there forever. Yeah. I see people who are stuck. Yep. And still blaming and still full of shame. Yeah. So how have you moved from this not getting stuck here to like solving problems? Because sometimes you do need to sometimes problems do take time.
They do.
Like I have also learned is that I sometimes don't take time, but how do you not get stuck there?
As soon as you said that, it hit me. I think that sometimes we have to understand something. And if we can't understand it, we're stuck. And sometimes there's no understanding something. There's no understanding why someone would leave a 2-year-old boy and not have any contact relationship and not pay child support and then have an opportunity to have that son 33 years later in your life and still continue to devalue, do things that have an opportunity to make up. And I'm speaking of my own life.
I know. I was like, is this you?
This is me. This is me. And for me to have an understanding of what someone else thinks or why they did things, I may never get that answer. Yeah. And if I want that answer, I could stay stuck there. Yeah. Of why a father would not, and to have 3 other children, to raise them, to do all of that. And then the ones that you've had prior to have very little, good experience. Experiences shape our lives, right? Mm-hmm. Good or bad. And so I've had to relinquish my right to understand. There's a scripture that says in Philippians that to have the peace that surpasses all understanding. And I heard a pastor once say that sometimes you have to relinquish your right to understand. If you want that peace, sometimes you relinquish that right to understand. And it really hit me like a ton of bricks to go, sometimes I won't. And I've got to be okay with that. And so even if I don't understand why would you do that? And not get an answer. But I get stuck there though. Even with my own kids, I want to know why. That's a hard place for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't get, it's everything but that. You know what I mean? And so I sometimes I have good situations with the whole why thing, and other times I don't. And I got to reconcile that with myself. And sometimes come to the position that they might not know why, and I might not know why. You know what I mean? And so those are the areas that I feel like in that process that have helped me to move past certain aspects.
So is it a matter of, like, if we get granular, is it a matter of changing your thoughts? Like, if you were constantly saying, why did my dad leave me? It must mean that I'm not worthy. It must mean that I am not lovable.
Yep.
Like, is it changing your thoughts that allow you to move through it, or you stop thinking about it?
What's your belief system, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's my belief system about myself. And for me, my faith is huge. And so for me to know that there's a God in heaven that loves me and that cherishes me, that created me, when I truly believe something, then it diminishes the weight and value of other aspects of my life, that I can now hinge and hold on to the hope that I am valued, I am loved, just not by that person.
It's almost like you have to practice it, is what I'm finding. Because my whole life I've kept thinking that if I just believed this way differently, then all these thoughts would just go away. And they haven't gone away. But the more that in my life, it's been like, I have to practice knowing that I'm loved and valued to get to a different belief.
Yeah. I think that it's the new experiences that help.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if we take old experiences that create old thought processes and belief systems, I have to have new experiences that can create new thoughts and new belief systems in my life. For instance, I hated holidays for a plethora of reasons. Just was bad for me. I mean, we would drink, it would be alcohol infested. And when I stopped, it was just this bad place. I mean, there was not much to it. It's not like I'm a child. I'm going to have a bunch of gifts under. I'm an adult now. I have responsibilities. And I married a woman who her favorite holiday, we literally have Christmas decorations up now.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You married Jason Jones.
Just full of life, vibrancy, and wants to celebrate. And it's one of my shortcomings to celebrate something intently. I can celebrate. Oh yeah, great. Now it's on to the next thing, right? What do we need to do next? And so for me, finally, after having multiple experiences, I had a Christmas and it changed the way I view Christmas. I was actually like, I'm actually looking forward to Christmas. And Mandy looked at me and said, what? She said, what'd you say? I said, I'm actually excited about Christmas. And she was like, oh, wow. And you should have seen not only what it did to me, but what it did to her, to know that the resiliency in creating consistent experiences that were positive, right? Healthy and positive. Those are two big things. Changed a person's ideal and experience of something.
And it's part of, I mean, that's why community, I feel like, is imperative.
Yeah.
I mean, they all work together. That's what I was thinking when you were talking about how it's a plethora, all these things working together to change our belief system.
Yeah.
Including time, which is, how many Christmases did you hate before you started to like it?
I mean, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4.
3 or 4. So 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. I don't think it was a hate, more like a dread.
A dread.
Or like whatever. You know what I mean? Just get through it. Kind of happy for the kids.
Like white knuckling it.
Happy for the kids, you know what I mean? But just bad experiences and memories of certain aspects. And that's why I coped with certain things. And then you come out of that and you have to deal with trauma and deal with some of those other things. But yeah.
So I don't know a lot of your story, but what I know, at some point you were in a dark place.
Yeah.
And then something happened to start the other side of the process.
Yeah.
So like, can you tell kind of where you at, and then what are your sparks that started to like change your life and start the rethreading process?
So the dark place, I got saved in 2013. It was right around Thanksgiving. And not a lot of people know this. And so when you used to Google my name, it used to be terrible.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And thankfully for certain things that I don't even know, I think not far long ago, I tried to look and I couldn't find it.
That's so cool.
But I was hooked on drugs, cocaine, alcohol. I had picked my son up from, here's some vulnerability for everybody. Picked my son up from daycare because I'd missed so many times in my previous marriage, and picked him up in high on drugs and alcohol. Never intended to hurt my child, but and drove around for 24 hours and never harmed him. But the police were looking for me. It was called an Amber Alert, and finally was on the phone with my best friend and handed him to my best friend. Obviously, my child wasn't harmed. This is my son Carson, 18 years old, and they and I drove off intending to kind of end my life at that point that night. And yeah, one of the darkest nights I've ever had. Tried to pull the trigger and nothing happened. And ended up on his couch. And a few days later, from coming to of this peace, I ended up in a church and gave my life to Jesus and began my journey with ridding myself of everything I've known my whole life, of insecurities, coping mechanism, alcoholism. It's just was inbred into that part of my family, especially my mom and my aunt, one of my aunts, which both of them died of alcoholism, cirrhosis. My mom actually just passed away last year, just recently, and from alcoholism. And it's a real thing, and it's a generational thing that can really shift and shape a child, you know what I mean? And that turns into an adult that now has to live with not only a single parenthood. My grandparents raised me. My mom was in and out of my life until I was about 16. And so for me as a young child, I mean, and then one part of my family still likes to shame in my process when I messed up. Nobody wants to try, but the person who tries gets chastised because you mess up. Which leads me to the point of why or what turned was not giving up. I've heard this, and it's such a true statement. You can never lose if you never give up. It's the realest thing I've ever heard. And I could have given up and just fallen back into everything I've ever known, and I just couldn't.
Do you know why? Do you have words?
By faith. I mean, there was something in me that I tried to walk away, and it was the most miserable 6 months I ever had. This is prior to Mandy, prior to any of this stuff. And man, it was terrible. I ended up in this relationship. I couldn't find a job. I mean, the Lord had his hand on my life, and I just couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. I mean, I was literally trapped. I felt like hell. And for me, it was. And I finally, after that point in time, the relationship with this girl ended, and was most toxic, insecure place. It was terrible. And I just was like, I can't live this way anymore. And so I knew at that point that I had tasted a piece of life that was good for me, but it wasn't going to be easy.
Mm.
That's what I had to know. And being a Marine and coming from being trained and hardened I felt like almost boot camp again. In Marine Corps boot camp, the Lord exposed to me in a Marine Corps boot camp, you get torn down to nothing. And then they build you up. And as you graduate, you become a Marine. And they've built you up. And I felt the same thing in my spirit. Like, I am being torn down to absolutely zero to be built up again into a new creation. And I had to succumb to the process. The process is the process.
The process is the process. I think this is why a lot of people don't ever start, because it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts and it's really hard. You have to be really brave. It takes a lot of time. I mean, it's all those things. And people, I know that sometimes why I kind of pull back when it gets too hard. I'm like, okay, this is really hard. I don't know if I can do this.
Well, you'll go as far as you work.
Yeah.
And some people don't want to work. And the thing that they'll start to realize is you're always working. You don't ever arrive. I mean, when we talked about mental health, I've grown. I've not arrived. I mean, seasons change. I mean, anybody out there can tell you that raising a teenager right now is just a whole nother level. Whole nother level of understanding, of patience, of things that I struggled within or didn't struggle with then at that age, I struggle with now at this age. And it's a process. I mean, do you have seasons of maybe ease? Sure. Maybe. I don't know. But sometimes are harder than others. I've never had harder times than I've had probably over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, in a state of
sobriety.
Yes.
How long have you been clean and sober?
Oh, since probably, 2013.
So 10 years?
Yeah, it's at least been, something like that.
Hold on. I did not know this.
I know.
So no, I knew, I had a glimpse, but I didn't know it was in 2013. Because I know you were in Mandy's story that I don't know how long you knew each other, and then you felt like God told the person to marry each other.
Yeah.
And so you hadn't been sober that long.
No. I had been in Mozambique, Africa prior to meeting Mandy. I was in a missionary school in Mozambique, Africa, and literally it was prior to that it was a radical shift. It was me getting away from this place, me honestly being able to work on myself. I knew I was going to help people, but I was going to be the one who was more help than anything. And it was taking the time to work on me and to have at least an opportunity to stop the chaos and an opportunity to at least identify some things that needed to be touched in my life, in community and in vulnerability and all these areas, that it allowed me to come back to have an opportunity to have a foundation to build on at that point. And I just continued to build from that point, and obviously met Mandy, and she has been a rock and a staple in my life of consistency and faithfulness and just love, just who she is, generosity. I've never met a more generous person in my life. And just her character, even from hearing stories from her friends of who she is. And her story, if she sat here and told you her story, you'd probably be in tears. There's so much that people don't know about her, and her strength. And she was born with cleft lip and palate and has had, I don't know how many mouth surgeries, face surgeries that she had to live with her whole life and had to go through all of her stuff. And she's been an inspiration to me, of struggle. And she's never had an alcohol drug problem. She's never really drank, and her family is a rock solid, many generations of faithful believers. And Like it just was, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Crazy.
What did her parents say when Mandy's like, I think this is the man I'm going to marry?
Luckily I knew her mom
Okay.
from the church that I was at.
Okay,
and
that's really.
so her mom knew of me, and then her Mandy's dad, who is no longer with us, amazing man. I think once he takes you in, he takes you in.
Mm.
It was really her other side, her aunts and uncles, that were actually not going to come because they thought I was wanted to take her money and you're going to marry this homeless.
Oh my God.
I mean, you couldn't be upset at them. And it's so funny now because the whole joke now is that they kicked Mandy out of the will and now I'm in. So I've passed the test.
You passed the test.
I did. I'm not who they thought I was.
That's so good.
So.
It's just so a testament to faith.
Yeah. Yep. It's I mean
in God, in a person. I mean,
yeah. It's without hope.
The belief that things can change.
Yeah. And you have to believe in yourself and you have to know you can do it and put the work in. And so, yeah,
So was there a time, like what made you believe in yourself again? Like, how did you come out from the shame and the blame? And like, I do think blame and shame stops you from believing in yourself.
Yeah.
I know. Speaking from experience.
I think I had gone so far down that it was more shame than blame.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, obviously, I wished my family hadn't taught me that. You know what I mean? Sometimes I would go, where did you think I learned this from? You think I just picked up a bottle of alcohol and just started to ingest this? No, it was actually just, exuded out of everything we did, holidays, all the stuff. And so it had gotten so bad that here's the point. When I went in the military, it wasn't so bad. I hadn't gotten as bad, but the military and the trauma and some of the loss and the survivor's guilt that I had from the military, I think became the tipping point for me of a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it just was hard.
And as a whole system, the military isn't necessarily set up to help you navigate that well.
They're trying a lot better, but I think they still fall super, super short. And I think that's why you see so many advocates and organizations out there that are having to bridge the gap because they just can't do it. And no matter what they campaign to do or say they're going to do, it just doesn't ever bode well for the vet. And so for us to learn something new, I just had a conversation with someone the other day and go, when you get out of the military and you come from these places you've been, whether it's combat, deployment, or just the environments of where you're at, this is no longer normal. Civilian life is no longer normal. And so it's so drastically different in a way of life. So adapting back to that tends to be super hard, and understanding what someone's been through and how they think is difficult. And so that's why you have so many families struggling to, receive their son back, their daughter back, their husbands back. Man, it just is such a deep dynamic, you know what I mean? And a lot of it, even I've had to go dig and do the deep work, was if you think of it, we didn't deal with it before we went in. All it did was magnify
whatever you didn't deal with it
1,000 times. You know what I mean? I always draw back trauma to childhood experiences. And so many times all they do is get magnified through a military experience. But it'll always go back to a childhood experience of where you were then. Most of the way you are is shaped at certain moments in that childhood. And that's why it's so important for parents, so important for mom and dad, and a safe, healthy environment. Not perfect, safe and healthy, that they can grow and they can learn certain attributes.
So how do you create that with not having it? And now you have a family
Yep.
and a blended family, which is not the most simple thing.
Yep.
How do you manage to find how to create safety within your family now?
Apologizing a lot. Apologize. That's
It's huge.
It is. We have one very distinct motto in our family. We don't always get it right, but we make it right.
Mm.
And so we've lived by that to say, listen, make it right. Like, no matter where you are in the position of this family, the hierarchy of it, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I have to admit that. And that's a leadership attribute, right?
Yeah.
All the way across the board. And so even with my children, because I tell you what, you want to know where you're truly at. It's not being in front of your board. It's not being in front of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The masses. It's being in the most harsh, vulnerable places, and your kids will call you out. You know what I mean? Especially if it's safe and healthy and they're not in fear. They'll tell you all about your stuff. They'll tell you when you messed up and said something you shouldn't have said, or you got a little bit upset or angry. And so it's an opportunity to say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. You know what I mean? But it also bodes responsibility for them to say, this is the example that I'm setting, that when I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But when you're wrong, you admit it as well. And so I think in those circumstances, that's probably been the number one driving principle for our family is that we are a family. And then I'm starting to learn to define things. Like, if you don't define something, they'll define it for you. And so especially with, people, employees, you've got to define what something means. Because I have an idea of what it means, but doesn't mean it means the same thing to you. And so for me and my kids, I'm like, what does family mean? Because for me, it means service, love, commitment. There's a lot of things that are deep. And for them, I don't even think they had answers for it. I don't know. It's just family. I was like, well, we have to have a lens to look through so that we have a right view of our responsibility to a family, And so for us, that's where we've been on the journey. So as we send these children out, that they have a better idea of what this looks like, because outside of you're going to have your own family, you're going to have your own situations, and you have to have some sort of grid. You don't show up with a manual. You don't show up with those things, but what you have are things that are passed down from generation to generation that create some health, stability, some guidance, some vision for them to build off of.
I mean, at Rethreaded, we talk a lot about, it's in our mission now, is to break the cycle of generational trauma.
Yeah.
And how much work that is.
Yeah.
Like, it has to do with like opportunity and financial success, but it's all that internal work to do to break that trauma.
Yeah. And like you said, I've heard it said, what's hidden can't be healed. And so if you want to carry that thing around, you are very welcome to do so. But there will be a point in time where that thing rears its ugly head. And like you said, you'll go through relationship to relationship, employment to employment, until you're ready to look yourself in the mirror and say, what's my part? And you start to own your part of it. And that's where the real work starts. Not what they did or didn't do, but what is my part? That's the only part my side of the street. That's the only part I'm responsible and I can do anything about. Not even my wife. I'm not in control of her. I have to respond and dictate my things off of what I know I'm responsible for.
And we talk about taking responsibility really means the ability to respond. And a lot of times when you are in trauma, you are in addiction, whatever you're in, wherever you're stuck, sometimes it steals your ability to respond. Or you have to learn how to respond and take control.
No, I think you're right. I think because the other part of it is reacting. I think what you get is emotional reactions, defense mechanisms, you know what I mean? That happened. And so a valid, well thought response, I think, creates the ownership, of your part of it, So I think I had to get out of reacting off of how I felt And I process how I feel, but I don't respond in that. I have to sit, and I've had to learn to sometimes not say anything at all. Sometimes it takes me a while. Yeah. But it's so wise though, to be able to say, hey, listen, I don't make decisions on how I feel. I had a Marine Corps, his name is Craig Blassingame. He's one of my Marine Corps buddies, and I don't know if I know he'll remember, but he said something during my hard times and said, you're not a different man than you used to be. You're the same man. So what I need you to do is I need you to step up, and I need you to start making good decisions. I need you to stop being emotional, and I need you to start making command decisions. Same ones you made back then, you can make now. So quit being so emotional about it and just make right decisions. And I remember processing that for a while and just going, man, like I can no longer make emotional based decisions, and I need to make and do the right thing. I always tell people, hey, listen, do the right thing. So when you know right and wrong and you make a right decision, because you know it's right, it doesn't feel well, doesn't feel good. But when you do it, when my emotions catch up, I'm so happy that I did. When they finally catch up, I'm like, I didn't get emotional. I didn't yell at my daughter. I didn't feed into the emotional part of this. And I just had a candid response. And maybe it didn't change anything, but I just let it be. And then a few days later, I'm so happy that I just handled myself in the right way. And when those emotions finally get subsided and I finally get calm, I'm like, I'm so happy that I did, because I didn't say something or I didn't do something that would affect things or make them worse.
I've been defining that. What you just said is courage. Like the courage is, I don't have it totally figured out yet, but part of courage is the ability to sit in your uncomfortableness and have delayed gratification. Part of that to me is so courageous.
Yeah. That's definitely, I think it's a learned behavior too. I think that's wisdom, right? Of knowing, I don't need the gratification now. I think that's a maturity and a wisdom that is like, I don't need it right now. There's nothing that it fills. No sense of pride in me, no sense of being right in me. You know what I mean? Or control, right? Control is a big one.
It's a big one.
And saying that, you know what? I don't have to be in control, and it's okay. Because this thing will come full circle.
Yeah.
And I think at that point, I think that you begin to see how powerful it is, not only for you, but for them, because it didn't make the situation worse. It didn't shift blame. It didn't make shame. It didn't do any of those things.
And I find when I practice in areas of my life that aren't that hard. So for example, when my alarm goes off at 4:55 a.m. to get up to go to the gym and I don't feel like it, like the practice of getting up anyways and going to the gym, because I know 100% I've never, ever regretted going to the gym. I always feel better. My day's better. My mood's better. Everything is better if I get up and do it, even though I don't feel like it. And that practice, I think, can strengthen your muscle so you can do the harder things with not to respond to your daughter.
Yep. It's a discipline.
It's a discipline.
Very much. Discipline's a huge leadership principle.
Probably one of my biggest, it is probably my biggest struggle.
Huge principle. That's probably more well pronounced in the military community.
Yeah.
Is discipline, military, like athletics, or probably military more than any of them, but high level athletics and athletes and things like that.
That's why I will always hire an athlete.
Yep.
Always.
Yep.
Because you got to learn such discipline and self-control.
Yep. It's a big deal. So the discipline will carry you through.
So how have you developed more discipline?
Doing things I don't like to do.
Do you have another example? Okay, help me walk this through this.
Yeah.
So there have you been diagnosed with ADHD?
I have not.
Anxiety? Any?
I don't think I've diagnosed myself with anything, honestly,
Okay.
because I think there was such a long period of time I didn't go to the VA, the doctor. I didn't go to anything, and I self-medicated and coped. But I wouldn't say I didn't have attributes of a lot of different things.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes in my brain, which is like ping, 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 all the time. All the time. Sometimes it's filled with negative thoughts. It's filled with all these things I have to do, not do. I know that is your brain as well. I'm assuming, because we kind of operate the same in life a little bit.
Yeah.
How have you been able to bring that down some?
I don't know if there's a specific thing. Exercise, working out helps me a lot. I train a ton in that. And so, I obviously my faith, I pray and read God's word a lot and has helped me. But I honestly am not a super overthinker. I'm trying to remember when that stopped for me. And I don't know if it was a conscious anything. I think it was a series of consistent behavioral disciplines that I've done that have just worked. I watch people that overthink, and I think that I capture it prior to me, because I can always tell because of their speech and the constant barrage of it's always something's wrong. I can't get past this. I'm like, whoa. I think it's slowing down in some capacities for me.
Have you slowed down?
A lot. I don't drink. I used to be hypertension. I used to be so wanting to be so amped and Red Bulled and pre-workout up. And I have found myself over the years in such a search of peace and calmness.
Me too.
That I just, and I sleep. I like sleep.
Me too.
I can sleep. I mean, I've had to figure out how to get good sleep, but I sleep. I think that's the only time my brain actually stops from going. And so there are times when I've gone home and taken a nap in the middle of the day if it's been a rough day. You know what I mean? Because I feel like that's almost a pause for me to disrupt some of the things that are happening. And I think it is a mindset. I'll never forget this Jocko Wilkins podcast. And it was basically taking every terrible scenario and saying, good. He'd say, oh, everything went to crap today? Good. Can't get the funds we need? Good. It was just this, I don't know, this just switch that was like, you know what? Good. I mean, what's really going to happen by overthinking, overprocessing, worrying about something that will relieve itself at some point? It will come through, right? It will happen. If you stay at something long enough, something's going to shift. Something's going to happen. But you got to keep to it. There are certain behavioral disciplines that are absolutely necessary for a good outcome. Habits. You'll never climb Mount Everest in your head right away. But I said, you got to break it down. Things can't be so insurmountable that they overwhelm you and destroy you and disappoint you quickly. You've got to bite size it down to good chunks where it is like good.
Yeah. I still struggle with that. Have you learned how to do that? Or do you have a community now around you who helps you do that? Or like, how have you managed to take that and break it down? I
think there's some mantras like that.
I like this.
Good. Like, I don't know. It's just become a mantra of mine. I just heard a quick snip on, as I was processing through, I watch a lot of leadership stuff, and it was leaders get through things way faster than other people. And I basically had to take a bad situation, and I just needed to get through it. The situation might have not gone away, but I'm just not stuck in the situation anymore. I'm not worrying about the situation anymore. I've gone past that point to know that there's going to be a solution.
Do you have an example?
Vulnerability again. We've had tough last 4, 5, 6 months. I mean, we've lost probably $3,000-$4,000 a month. And for a small company, that's a lot. And then my wife has had no weddings for the last 4 months. It's been the toughest time. And I just looked at it and I was like, you start to see payroll get tight. You start to see things happen and start to figure out creativity. I have to buy green coffee. I have to fill orders. And I just was like, one thing happened and it really, momentum started to shift. One good thing, and it was a vendor of mine that ended up giving me terms, pulling coffee in here, giving me terms and getting freeing up cash flow for $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000. And it just shifted something in me that was like, good. There's my gap. There's a space and I'm going to push hard through it. And then I started to see other things starting to shift. I'm still waiting on a few things that could really change the trajectory of our ERC tax credits that I've been waiting on to see when they're going to come in that we're approved for. You know what I mean? The sale of my mom's house, financial money out of both my personal side as well, that we'll get back hopefully in the next 2 weeks that it's closing. So there's some things that in the moment, if I don't look out far enough, I'll just see what's right in front of me. And that's being a visionary too. You got to see something out there that gives you something to cling to, something that's going to shift, something that just drives you harder. Yeah. So that's a real situation that I found just a slight shift. Something just one thing went right.
And I'm thinking of time. You know, time is your currency to heal. Time is your currency to reach your potential. So like you have the past 3 to 4 months, how you handled that time determined this next, 4 to 5 months. And you could have been stuck in blame and shame and worry and tension, but you were able to like manage that tension of, oh, this is really uncomfortable, and stay steady through it.
Yeah. Consistency changed my life. There was a word that I felt that I was needed so desperately in my life, and it was the word consistency. And there's a leadership quote: successful people do consistently what others do occasionally. And it's always stuck with me. It's a Craig Rochelle quote, and it's stuck with me that no matter how I feel, these are the things that I'm going to do day in and day out. There are certain things that I just will not.
What do you do every day?
On. I wake up, I pray, I get in my word, I exercise, and I get to work. I plan my day and I execute. So I have to stick with those, and I spend time with my family. It's huge for me to, I don't miss dinner. Has to be something super, super important. Yeah.
So has this made you more organized?
I would say that it's definitely brought me on the path to become more organized. I think it's also brought to my attention how important it is to delegate and to have people in place. It's hard to be organized with everything. It's just sometimes nearly impossible. There's not enough hours in a day. And so to ask yourself to do something that's nearly impossible, especially for valuing what's important to you, comes down to the aspects of what do I need to do well? And I just need to do those things. If it's one thing, if it's two things. I've had this adage, I don't put more on than I can fit on one hand. If I start to get into hand two, it's too much. So I have to have, if I have room, then I'll make an exception to that. And it just has allowed me to not be overwhelmed in certain aspects. But again, business is business. People leave, people take new opportunities. And so I just actually was able to hire recently. I've had a gap for 4 or 5 months for roasting and production and helping the warehouse, and just had the right opportunity come out. And amazing guy, team player, knows a lot, is just helped me out tremendously to now be able to step back and now be able to breathe and look at, where do we need to work? What do we need to do? And listen to my staff and listen to some feedback and go, hey, here are some things I need to address. I just had one of my staff members tell me that I needed to be in the shop, that the regime that I trained is no longer there. And I just have not had the time to retrain and pour into this new team and educate them like I had the old one.
You would have never said any of this 5 years ago. I'm serious though. I've known you long enough to know that you would have not said this 5 years ago.
Yeah. I probably say more than I should. But
I mean, I don't know if you were operating in this way 5 years ago. I feel like the way that you operate now is different.
Yeah.
You feel much more at peace. You feel much more focused and centered.
Yeah. No, I definitely have grown.
I mean, you still double booked yourself today.
I sure did.
That's what I was hoping. I was like hoping all of a sudden I would get more organized.
No, I don't think I've arrived there. I think that I still have some delegation to do. I still have opportunity, and obviously being a small business, you can only delegate and give opportunity to what you can pay for.
Yeah. And I find I've always struggled with delegation so much because time is my nemesis. I'm also so impatient that it's so hard for me to slow down and take the time to train the person.
Yeah.
So I end up delegating too fast, too soon, and then I get frustrated because they're not doing it the way I want, but I haven't communicated how I really want it because I haven't taken the time, and it just continues this vicious cycle. So, delegation takes time.
Yeah.
To delegate in a good way.
Yeah. It takes your time.
Yeah, and it takes your time, and if you already feel stretched for time, then
it's not a quick fix.
No.
It's a little bit longer fix, but I think the long run,
but in the long run,
it really pays off.
The courage to manage that anxiety for the betterment of everyone around you, betterment of your company.
Yep. It always becomes about everyone else.
Yeah.
It's the only way that it'll truly grow and flourish and be healthy and successful. I always say it's like successful is not success if it's not healthy. It won't
so
stay.
True.
Yeah, it won't stay. And it's not worth it, especially in the day and age that we're in, where there's so much more mental health. It's tragic. And I empathize and sympathize with every aspect of the mental, what we've been through, what people have to go through now versus life was so much more simple. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. Man, my phone was attached to a wall, and I didn't know what everybody else was doing. I had no idea you know what I mean? It never got to you. You know what I mean? You didn't have to worry about thinking that you missed out or nobody liked you or somebody was cyberbullying. If you got bullied, you were fighting out in the yard.
That's true.
In the front yard, it was over.
Or it was like on your beeper 911 or something.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely different times we're in, and we're evolving. But I honestly, as much as I can say, I just wish we would. Less is more. Less is so much more, and I think that's what you're seeing from what I've experienced. And in the last 4 years, I've lost 8 people. And you can't get lives back. And died. Yeah, close to me. And I think suffering, loss, and tragedy, and some of those pieces, it'll change you. You won't be the same person. And I think you start getting older. I'm 48 now, and things are less important to me. You know, I mean, things that I used to say have now become more real than ever. I used to say, I want to make a living, but more than anything, I want to make a difference. And that's more prevalent in my life than ever. It's not about being the next superstar or the next, viral video. It's the constant impressions of opportunity that you have for the person in front of you to hopefully touch them for good and hopefully influence them for good, that they leave better than when they came in. That's our hope and goal, is that every person you interact with is hopefully better off because of you, because of your life and how you live and what you believe in and how you treat them, how you view them, how you value them. That's a big thing for us. Honor affirms value. So when I honor someone, that means I value them. And that's a big, big thing for me.
So many questions that they're stuck in there now as we're going along.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about right now?
Just what I said. I mean, just how valuable people are. I had an opportunity to really say that, especially with the homelessness and what do we propose makes a person valuable?
I mean, it's the upside down kingdom. The first shall be last and the last shall be first.
And if we don't view every person with that sense of just really like centered and just authentic, that I really do care and I see you, type of thing, then it can just get lost. Like what is truly important anymore? I mean, humanity's the most important thing on the face of this earth. And we can't lose sight of that. Most valuable resource is a human life. And if we don't value those and we don't invest in those, we'll lose it. We have to invest in the human life and the generational piece of this, or else we'll lose it. It will devalue. It will not be what it was.